Where do you think change is going to come from in the next 10, 15 years of comic books? Is it likely to come from the giant corporations from the Marvel and DC? Is it likely to come from the established independents like Boom or Valiant? Or is it likely to come from the fans? Well, I think history of other industries tell us the answer to that. But what do I actually think is going to happen? Hey, everybody, this is Perch. Change is coming to comics, and by saying that, it's not like this kind of doom and gloom, the end is coming comment. It's just change is coming. And change isn't a big surprise. Change happens to every industry all the time, and it's happened to comics before. The transition from the newsstand to the direct market, and I would argue even whatever you want to call what happened in the early 2000s to the middle 2000s was a change. Maybe that could be encapsulated by the fact that Marvel was bought by Disney, and kind of the game changed a lot for how comics are going to be produced. But change is coming. It's inevitable. We see the dominant players in what we thought of as Western comics have been usurped by people from other countries, companies from other countries, and places like Scholastic and others. So there is evolution that's going to take place. The challenge is, when I talk to people, more often than not, it's people are paralyzed. They're paralyzed with fear of change. And no matter who you are listening to this video, no matter where you're coming from, no matter if you like the stories, hate the stories, whatever it happens to be, I think one thing that pretty much everyone can agree upon is that in 5, 10 years, things are going to look different. They kind of have to look different. They're not just going to keep producing comics this way. And I'm not talking about, the demographics of the characters changing or any of that kind of stuff. I'm talking bigger changes. The comic industry operates in many cases like an old publishing industry with a lot of old publishing mentalities. It's it's very traditional in terms of how deadlines work, how pages work, and when innovations come, they're often in the form of, "Hey, what if we got the penciler to also be the inker and we could save some money?" That's kind of where things sit. The way comics are budgeted is more of, we're going to allocate money to this project. It's very old fashioned. I don't know what industry would be the best to kind of map comics to, but if you were to say map it to games, and you look at the difference between how games were made kind of 20 years ago to the new way of DLC and mobile and other factors of how games are produced and the speed at which games have to be produced, it's a different animal now. And comics hasn't made that transition. And I think that a lot of the people who are at the top of comics, whether it's a Jim Lee or it's a Tom Brevoort or a Joe Quesada or whoever it is, I think that in many cases they're stuck a little bit. They know that the way that things have been going is not the way things are going to go in the future. They know that new ideas have to come in, and those new ideas are not going to come from them. And I'm sure that's a scary and paralyzing thought, because when it tips over, when it changes, it's going to flush a lot of the old veterans out. And one, I would say, very negative thing about comics is that it doesn't treat its veterans particularly well. I think the people who invest a lot of time and care and energy into comics for decades tend to be on the outs. There's not a lot of really happy stories in a lot of cases for comics, either for kind of young insurgents like Platt, like I did a video on a while ago, or frankly, people like Ordway or Kirby or those are kind of two odd names to pull out of the hat, but it's like you think about the contributions to entertainment that, say, a Denny O'Neil did to comics. And you think about the equivalent in the movie industry. I mean, there would be, lifetime achievement awards, and there would be, I mean, the people would be revered. In comics, they're just kind of brushed aside and forgotten. Now, yes, every now and then, people will come up and say, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and they pay homage to a lot of these kind of older veterans, but it feels like window dressing. It doesn't feel like, you know, real respect for what came before, a long time before. Now, why does that matter to this? Well, if we're going through another change relatively soon, it means a lot of the people who are at the top of comics right now know that it's about time for them to retire. It's about time for them to kind of pack it in. And they see what happened to the people who came before them. They see how they were largely forgotten. And I think that that terrifies people. I think that that causes people to cling on tighter to a system that, is in a form of arrested development that arguably needs to evolve, and it's not evolving because people are not allowing it to evolve. And so the pressure is building like a carbonated drink where it's been shaken. It's building and building and building. Eventually, something is going to pop. And in many ways, it's likely to be uglier for a lot of these people that held things back. I do believe that in comics in the next 5 or so years, that somebody, one of these people, is going to either meet someone, some young, well, not necessarily young, but insurgent. They're going to find their Steve Jobs of comics over the next 5 years, and they're going to be smart enough to know that they can't stop that change, but they can ride along with it. They can help shepherd it in, and it will help kind of their place in history be established a little bit better. I think somebody will make that call. I don't think that's Jim Lee. I think Jim Lee his evolution is completely now into Warner Media and being kind of a creative visionary over there with the things they're doing. I think jumping into that bigger game. I think his head is already largely there. Jeff Johns long ago I think made that transition. Joe Quesada I think would like to, but I think now this is speculation on my part, but I've done some work with Disney in the past, the corporation. I know a lot of people who work at Disney, and when you reach a certain level, i.e., a VP or above level at that company, they give you pretty significant, what they call golden handcuffs, stock options, and other things to incentivize you to just kind of shut up and play ball. And those people tend to be very, very severely not rock the boat people. The only way that in many cases your free ride comes to an end is if you take a chance and it fails. And in many cases the gravity and the momentum is not to take a chance, to just let things ride and let things keep going. But regardless, I'm speculating. I don't know who this person is. And I've been thinking a lot about comics, and I've been thinking about a lot of the people who are in the business side of things who are running things. And even some of the names of people that I've thought could maybe take that position have shown themselves in the last couple of years to either be uninterested in it or maybe, just desiring something different. I mean, I'll just speak openly about it. I think a guy like Scott Snyder is a planner. He's somebody who does kind of understand the mechanics of bureaucracy and minutia, and he does kind of understand how that stuff can be done. I think he is a good pitch man for his books. I think he has a desire to do something bigger. It's that last piece. It's that desire to be more, desire to take something and be larger with it. That's the hunger that I think leads to this evolutionary change. The problem is, I get the feeling increasing, and I don't know. I'm purely from a distance, based on what I read on social media and interviews and other places. Snyder's going to do some creator-owned titles and everything else. I don't see him kind of taking a run at things. And when I say taking a run at things, I mean, exerting some control and say, you know what, I'm going to be the guy who's going to, suck it up and be part of this company for the next 20 years and be the person who may not be writing a lot of the stories, but is going to advance us to tomorrow. I think he may have a lot of the skills. I just don't think he has the interest, or I don't know. So I use him as kind of an illustration. I know a lot of people who are good people who are interested in these topics and would like to certainly do something, for themselves. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, they just want to put out titles. They want to kind of ride this into where they can have more security for their books, or being able to produce work that they want to produce. But who are the people who are going to go play corporate hardball at the Disney, at the Marvel? I mean, Image is a weird case because it doesn't necessarily operate that way, but you could argue that needs to start. There's a lot of opportunity in comics right now. Some people might listen to this video and say, this has a very negative tone to it. I don't mean it that way. In fact, if anything, the opposite. I think there is a huge opportunity in comics. That's the glass half full part. The glass half empty part is, I'm not sure who's going to go do this. because right now it seems like the business and the market innovators are not in Western comics. They're not in the companies that we've known and a lot of us have grown up with for the past 4 or 5 decades. That's not where it's coming from. It's coming from other places. It makes me feel like if I was still doing this channel in 10 years from now, and I won't be, but if I was, my feeling is I'm going to be talking a lot about the moves that Scholastic made or Penguin made. That feels like what I'm going to be spending much of my time doing because I think that's where the innovation is going to come from. It's hard for me to digest the idea that the big giants of comics as it has existed for the last 50 years are not going to be the ones to kind of lead that next generation, lead that next shift. I don't think it. I'm fairly confident at this point. It's not it's not coming from these two. And what's even more peculiar about it is kind of never in their history have they had the backing of a multinational global kind of marketing and idea firm. I mean, Disney prides itself on whether it's the Imagineering department or Blue Sky or whatever it happens to be at Disney. They're idea people, and yet it hasn't felt like treading water like this in a long time. It's very curious. So I think that to me there's an inevitability. The inevitability is the comic industry is changing. The sensibilities are changing. The aspects of it are changing. And I think some parts that I'll like, some parts that I won't. The who is the person? Who can be those people? I guess that's a question to you listening to this video. Who are the people who you think can go play at that corporate level, who can be leaders inside of organizations, who can gather 40, 50 people to their backs and say, we are going to change this industry. We're going to go and do things. Who? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below who you think might be that person. It's not individuals. There's a lot of good individuals out there who are doing good individual work. But I'm talking about somebody who can kind of marshal support and change a corporation. That's a different skill set. And I'm not sure those people really exist right now. In many cases, I did a video a while back of saying you should hire smarter than you. I think at the corporate level, I think a lot of comic companies have deliberately not taken that strategy to kind of keep things the way they are for job safety and security. The problem is in 2020, it has successfully eliminated a lot of the natural kind of uplift of ideas and people. And I think that's going to come back to haunt people. At any rate, that's what I think. What do you think? Leave a comment below. Who do you think might be the person to kind of come in and change this industry? And or do you disagree with my entire premise? Do you say, there's no reason to change, everything's fine? That's okay too. I'm all ears. Anyway, like, subscribe, dislike, downvote, vote, upvote, side vote, whatever you happen to do. Most importantly, though, thanks for listening.